A very good afternoon from Abuja in Nigeria. My name is Hawa Yabani. I am the chair for the Africa continent for this World Business Angel Investors Week, and also the chair for the Nigeria segment of the week. I'm also the High Commissioner for Nigeria for the World Business Angels Forum. It is my privilege in all of those capacities to welcome my fellow African chairpersons and their participants to the opening ceremony of the Africa Day of the World Business Angels Investors Week, coordinated globally by the World Business Angels Investment Forum, as a platform for which to campaign for solutions to critical issues of early stage equity and capital markets, startup economies, and other global concerns, while connecting, learning, sharing, exhibiting inventions and innovations, and exchanging know-how that promotes entrepreneurship and angel investment ecosystems. The platform is well positioned to continually engage all stakeholders in analyzing why and how angel investment should be leveraged as a must-have tool for boosting economies and reiterating how entrepreneurial ecosystems can create more jobs, wealth, and social justice in cooperation with key players in early stage equity markets. I'm very excited that the collective efforts of the WBAF headquarters and respective organizers of all participating countries culminated in this promising Maiden Angels Week. Though the week will feature 6 African countries this year, the broad and exciting range of topics that will be delivered through our keynote addresses and panel discussions will be quite representational of the happenings across the entire continent, with respect to the broad theme of the week and the various sub-themes for each of the 6 countries. With the increase in the number of African startups that are being accepted into top global accelerators and raising investments, there's no doubt that the future remains very promising for the continent's entrepreneurship ecosystem. A week hardly goes by without several African startups raising funds or prominent multinational launching funds or special initiatives to support specific sectors in Africa. Notwithstanding, the country lags behind on the level of maturity of our startup ecosystem, hence the importance and impact of platforms like the WBAF and the WBAW. The sessions would feature very important persons from public and private sectors of the participating countries, during and following which we expect deeper conversations, collaborations, solutions, and lasting relationships that will catalyze major transformations on the African continent. I'll give a very high-level overview of what should be expected from each country's session that will be taking place most of today. The Congo session will explore how joint efforts from the government, entrepreneurs, and investors could help build a formidable startup ecosystem. It will delve into the reasons why diaspora investors should take part in investing in the country, how this is important, and the ways to better prepare startups for such investments. There will also be information on PPPs, public-private partnerships, and the opportunities therein in general, and how potential partners could tap into them. Moving on to Côte d'Ivoire, their session will showcase investment opportunities in the country, along with discussions on how the local entrepreneurship ecosystem can be developed vis-a-vis some American success stories, as well as how these could serve as inspiration to creating lasting solutions to solve the challenges that the country faces. It will also discuss the roles and benefits of private funds, including angel investments, and how these could be better harnessed for the growth of the local ecosystem. The Nigeria session will examine some elements that are necessary for the country's continued startup success, like the importance of the synergy between government and entrepreneurs, gender inclusivity, a startup act, and ways that technology could be leveraged to enable deeper angel investments in the country, especially in these pandemic times. The Rwanda session will broadly examine the investment landscape on the continent at large, with a special focus on Rwanda and how this could be improved. Tanzania will be discussing angel investment as a tool for boosting economies and the best ways for startups and SMEs to attract smart finance. And last but not the least, the Zambia session will focus on reshaping the future of financing for Zambia entrepreneurs to help them effectively build global businesses. You can quickly register and join from the event website to participate in any of the country sessions. In this Africa opening ceremony, we'll start with an address by the World Business Angels Forum's Global Chair, Bebas Altuntaj, who regrettably but understandably cannot attend the different sessions in person. Following his welcome address, we will have an informative panel discussion titled Rethinking Africa, a call for investing from within, to be moderated by Kezi Mukiri, with a great panel from Congo, Cote d'Ivoire, Kenya, Nigeria, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. I really like the topic, by the way, thanks to our Zambia country chair, Mulemwa Mungwa, who played an instrumental role in putting the plans for this opening ceremony together. While I'll allow the moderator to introduce the panel members, Kezi, the moderator, is an Africa-focused trade lawyer, sustainability consultant, and award-winning entrepreneur with over 15 years of experience in enterprise development, working with clients spread across 5 continents. She's the executive director of Ignite Trade Africa, a business and trade consultancy firm that promotes inclusive trade for sustainable development by helping enterprises create sustainable growth through successful expansion into African markets. I'm confident that each participant will enjoy this ceremony and hopeful that it will lead to lasting post-event connections and collaborations. I also strongly believe that by working together across borders with a common role, we will bring about positive change in Africa and the global economy at large. Now I'm passing on to Kezi, the moderator of the panel, to take on from here. Thank you, Kezi, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Hawa.
Thank you, Hawa.
That was a brilliant introduction and a great background, providing illumination as to why we are all here today. I'm very excited today to be moderating this dynamic panel, which truly represents the face of Africa. And I do look forward to great insights and great take-home action points for each one of us for our respective countries. Allow me to quickly introduce members of the panel. And I want to start with Hannah Subui, joining us from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Hannah is an experienced investor across Africa in private equity, venture capital, and even angel investing. She is currently acting as a country officer for the Democratic Republic of Congo within Propaco, one of the largest DFIs in the world. Hannah has also been recently appointed as a board member of ABAN, the Africa Business Angel Network, which is a Pan-African non-profit association. And Hannah will be telling us a little bit on what they are doing on both of those fronts. Secondly, I'd like to introduce Etienne. Etienne is joining us from Cote d'Ivoire. He is a digital economy builder with over 22 years of experience in marketing, sales, and ICT management. With his international marketing background, Etienne worked for Unilever, FWA as a regional brand manager, and is currently the general manager Francophone West Africa for Main One, a leading provider of innovative telecom solutions in West Africa. Welcome, Etienne. Next, we have Mimshak Obioha joining us from Nigeria. He is a social entrepreneur, development expert, and project management specialist with vast experience working in Africa's largest economic market. His experience spans several areas and sectors, including youth development, social impact, social change, and education. Welcome very much, Mimshak. Next, I would like to introduce Trevor. Trevor is joining us from Zambia. Trevor Hambai is a financial analyst and a PhD research fellow who has just completed a 4-year PhD research study in SME access to finance. He also runs a small business has also run a small business enterprise for over 20 years. I'm very keen, Trevor, to hear some of the findings from your research on this critical issue of SME access to finance on our continent. Next, I would like to introduce Mukululi Ndlovu from Zimbabwe. MK, as we will be referring to him on this panel, has worked for over 22 years in software enterprise resource planning implementation and has demonstrated consistent success in leading technology deployments, training, and innovation throughout his tenure. He has been instrumental in envisaging and developing innovative technology solutions for business challenges in several African countries. And he too is a startup mentor and investor. And last but not least, I introduce my compatriot Anne Wamboi Gaitha, who is an international trade and investment expert, focusing on international trade, investment banking, and investment management in Africa and within Africa. She is also a wealth and executive coach for African leaders and influencers. She brings expertise in understanding how global wealth is created and creating value for clients to achieve their financial goals by creating generational or intergenerational wealth, as well as building prosperous organizations. So welcome everybody to this panel conversation. We are looking forward to a vibrant conversation. Those joining us on the call, feel free to add your input in the chat box, in the Q&A. We'll be happy to engage and make it as interactive as possible. So let's dive in straight into our conversation. And I do want to start with Hannah. If Hannah, you could just give us a very high level background and some of the work that you're doing with Properco, and perhaps a little bit on the role on the Africa Business Angel Network. Hannah, welcome.
Hi, thank you very much for hosting me today, and very pleased to talk about the angel investment world in DRC. It's actually not directly in connection with my main mandate as a country officer for Properco. I'm actually an angel investor on the African continent for like 3 years now, had set up the first women-led investment club in South Africa on investing in women-led tech businesses. And today I'm happy to be back home in Kinshasa and having the ability to set up another investment club with some of my fellow here in DRC. And the aim is for us to invest both in startups in DRC, but also in innovative local SMEs. So I think the ecosystem is at the same time very attractive. There are a lot of entrepreneurs and companies who have the relevant, financial performance, turnover, and other KPIs and metrics relevant for us to do, angel investments. But at the same time, the ecosystem is not well recognized internationally. We don't have the legal framework and regulatory framework yet to be able to do angel investments at a scalable level. So I think it's quite interesting for us to try to create a new market here in DRC when it comes to angel investments.
Great, thank you, Hannah. We will be picking a little bit of what it is that you're mentioning across our conversation over the next few minutes. But perhaps just to give us a good background and to get us really kicked in and started, I want to ask WBAF Nigeria to kindly get the address from the WBAF president at this point, just to provide a good kickoff and good background to this conversation.
Dear distinguished keynote speakers, dear moderators, dear speakers of roundtables, dear participants. Welcome to the World Business Angel Investors Week, and welcome to the Angel Investors flagship event in the world. World Business Angel Investors Week is a great platform where all stakeholders come together to assess their fast-paced journey, to analyze why and how we should leverage angel investment as a must-have financial tool for boosting economies. We are going to reiterate how entrepreneurial ecosystems can create more jobs, more wealth, and more social justice in cooperation with key players of early-stage equity markets. During the World Business Angel Investors Week, we are going to create a unique opportunity to showcase fresh and innovative ideas that inspire current and future leaders of the world to take risks on new ideas, collaborate across sectors, and transform world economies through the scaling of entrepreneurship, angel investment, financial inclusion, and innovation. This week-long event is an open platform for connecting, learning, sharing, and exchanging know-how that promotes entrepreneurship and angel investment ecosystems. This is a great platform from which to campaign for solutions to critical issues of early-stage equity and capital markets and other worldwide concerns at the United Nations, the European Union, and G20 countries level. As an affiliated partner of the G20 Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion, GPFI, the World Business Angel Investors Investment Forum is proud of organizing all events of the week globally. We are going to have 156 keynote speakers, 138 roundtables, with 325 speakers from 128 countries until next Sunday. 72 countries are celebrating this week until next Sunday. And I'm sure all participants from Europe, Asia, Africa, North America, Latin America, and the Caribbean, and MENA region will find a rewarding experience by joining and following the events until the end of this week. I want to thank so much to all country chairs and continental chairs for their efforts to make all these happen. I want to highlight an important detail of this week. The detail is this week is now celebrated under one global topic: international diplomacy and business diplomacy for international entrepreneurship. Why we wanted to come together under this global topic this year? Mr. COVID alerted all entrepreneurial ecosystem about the importance of business diplomacy for startups, scale-ups, and entrepreneurs and SMEs. We are inviting all governments to consider including more financial support in their recovery plans against COVID-19 for entrepreneurs and for SMEs and for startups, because entrepreneurs of today need more support to be ready for post-pandemic times. Why? Because they are suffering. They are suffering financially. And governments should start immediately considering the importance of financial support for startups, because they are creating new jobs, they are creating new wealth, and they are contributing to social justice. So the WBAW board decided to invite all stakeholders under this global theme and invite all policymakers to take this important issue into consideration. Without financial support, entrepreneurs will not be able to transform their businesses digitally. Business transformation and digital transformation are two key words for entrepreneurs of today. if they cannot succeed, if they cannot achieve transforming their businesses digitally, they are going to suffer more in the future, which means governments will suffer too, because these entrepreneurs will not be able to create more jobs in post-pandemic times. We are going to host 80,000 participants this year from almost all continents. And it is a great pleasure for me to see all global stakeholders of the WBAF came together to really support entrepreneurs and startups. All events this year and always will be free for everybody who want to join our global efforts in this week. I am sure you are going to find a rewarding experience by joining this week's events. And special thanks are going to all country chairs and continental chairs who made all these things happen. Thank you very much and enjoy.
Thank you. Indeed, that provides an excellent background on our focus for today's conversation. Let's pick it from where our global chair has left it. Entrepreneurs are the heartbeat of our ecosystems here. I mean, they are the heartbeat of our economies here in Africa. And in recent months and weeks and over the last 2 years, since the start of the pandemic, there's been a lot of focus on the survival of entrepreneurs. There's been a lot of programs, initiatives to help entrepreneurs navigate the COVID-19 crisis. But the truth is, entrepreneurs need financing to get through this economic downturn. And I want to come back to you, Hannah, just pick up on where you left. Is the need of entrepreneurs being matched by availability of finance? Because governments, and different bodies around the world have all these initiatives talking about the need to ensure that entrepreneurs survive this period. But we don't see financing, an equal push towards making finance available for entrepreneurs to survive. So where is this finance going to come from? Is there enough? Do you feel that there is enough that is being done to drive financing initiatives towards entrepreneurs on the continent?
I think we should really avoid mixing topics that are completely different, right? If you are an angel investor, your role is not to invest to help a company survive. You invest because you expect the company to grow exponentially and you expect to get and receive an attractive return. So this is not philanthropy, right? So I think it's the first topic that we need to clear to make sure that everybody thinks the same way. The second topic, I'm definitely coming from a path in my life where I met my entire career in the English-speaking world, where we avoid the government, or we don't expect the government to do much for us. So to expect the government to set up financing initiatives for startups who are barely surviving, I'm not sure that's the right mindset. And frankly, especially in Africa and especially in Central Africa, in a country like DRC, the government doesn't have the financing and startups are not a priority. So that's the second point. So the third point, I think it's important for the private sector to focus on startups and or innovative SMEs, and to see how in a very difficult operating environment, it's still possible to create value, to create business models that are resilient and that make sense in a COVID world. And thank God we are still looking and finding this type of opportunities that are very attractive. But I don't know, to name a few, we are looking at a company which is, I would say, I don't like to say the equivalent of Uber, but a little bit of that, so which is basically registering all the cabs and motors that are transporting people in DRC and in some other countries in Central Africa. And as you can imagine, in our cities, it's very important to be able to offer this type of offer where now we can improve the safety on the roads. The drivers are registered on the database, obviously they pay for it, and then you can add a lot of value-added services that are going to create value for the companies and for the investors. And this is something that we do in a COVID world, right? So I think instead of always looking for the government to come to us with some money that we don't have, it's important to focus on what are the business models that are relevant and key in a COVID world, and that makes sense, and how can the private sectors mobilize capital to generate returns, have an impact, create jobs, and then being able to develop sustainable ecosystems.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it's not just government that will be interested in the survival of SMEs. It's also private sector, because SMEs are a critical component of supply chains, even for larger players in the private sector. But let me just ask Mimshak. Hannah is talking about the development, with needing to focus on development of business models, which is really important, because at the end of the day, investors, even angel investors, will be looking for a return on their investment. Mimshak, when you look at the entrepreneurship ecosystem on Africa, do you see potential small businesses in Africa? Do you see potential for maybe programs that are aimed around enhancing attractiveness of these SMEs, perhaps building capacity? Because it's not just about financing or directing investment to these businesses. There's also the piece of capacity development. There is being able to match capacity to investment. What do you see as the gaps, maybe even looking at across West Africa? And what do we need to do to enhance preparedness? Because not all of these enterprises are even prepared or even attractive for any form of investment whatsoever.
Thanks so much. And I want to say a big thank you to the African Chair for the opportunity to be speaking on this platform. I'll just pick up from where Anna stopped with talking about, so I feel like there are roles that different stakeholders have to play in financing startups, right? For the angel investor, he or she cares about finding the best companies that have the best business models, that have the opportunity and the market potential to create huge returns. But however, there's a role that governments and I also think development finance have to play in the mix of being able to catalyze what I like to call investments, or being able to unlock investments. If we look at the amount of investment dollars coming into or being put into startups in Africa today, we can see that most of that money is coming either from the US or from Europe or from China. And this, for me, begins to be troubling in a sense, because what this means is a lot of these companies, even though they were started or founded by African founders, are not going to be African businesses. And somebody might say, well, how does this affect us in any way, right? But what this means is most of the revenues and profits made by these companies will be repatriated to whatever countries the investment is coming from. And what we'll have at the end of the day is some form of neo-colonialism. And so there is the job for governments and there's a job for development finance to unlock and to catalyze local investors and local investment, because we have HNIs and high net worth individuals on the continent who still are not making investments in startups. Either they do not understand the investment landscape, they don't understand how to invest in startups, so there's just no clear incentive for them to put their monies in this risky set of companies called startups. Now, that aside, in terms of thinking about the opportunity or the potential for capacity building for founders to be better ready for investment, of course, there is huge room there. If we look at the investment landscape again, you would see the trend towards all the investments going to a very few companies. And the reason is the higher you go in the value chain, the lesser the risk with the investment. But what that also means is that a lot of startups are stuck at the bottom of the pyramid, struggling for the peanuts and the little amount of funding that trickles down to them. And why this is disastrous is that there needs to be a steady flow of pipeline going upwards to create the much larger market on top. But if there is no investment on the bottom of the pyramid pushing these sort of people upwards, then we have a problem. Now, the thing is, for many of these people at the bottom of the pyramid who are struggling for the little resources, that is where a lot of the capacity building is now required. And I feel like this is where hubs sort of come into the mix. I believe that hubs can take a very strategic position in investment readiness. Now, how do we get the little guy who's created an innovative solution in some garage somewhere in some country to be better prepared, understand the terminology, understand the structures and systems they need to put in place, understand the language and the pitch that they need to present to be able to get the investments coming in. But even if all of this work is done and the investors are not ready or not available, and there are no sort of supporting policies and incentives to unlock those capital, that capital, then all the work that they would do will still be futile because monies will not still be coming in. If you look at how startups raise money, every startup that has been able to raise first and second rounds of funding find it super easy to raise money going forward. So even before you hear of a round, you hear it's closed. So Flutterwave is closing a round because why? They're a big fintech organization. Everybody wants to give Flutterwave money. And so the higher they go on the value chain, the more finance they're able to get. But there needs to be more support for the guys, what I like to call the little guys at the bottom of the pyramid.
So essentially, Mimshak, you're saying we can't put everybody in silos. We can't say, you know, government, you know, can only do this, or those capacity development institutions can only do this. There's got to be everybody putting their hands on the deck, because everybody has got a role to play. You know, because you know, you need a regulatory environment that is even friendly to founders. You need, you know, resources trickling down to the bottom. So building up on what you're saying, Mimshak, we don't have a shortage of innovators on the continent. No. We don't have a shortage of, you know, of even innovations. What we have a shortage of, I think, is cohesive, collaborative efforts.
Exactly.
Building an ecosystem that supports innovation and at the same time and is able to facilitate the resilience of these innovations, enables them to rise. You know, maybe Mkululi, I just want to put you in at this point. You know, and maybe I should even have asked this one to Mimshak. We'll throw it back to you, Mimshak. Nigeria is leading, you know, leading the continent on, we can see the level of innovation coming out of your market, and looking at what's happening in fintech, what's happening in e-commerce, maybe a few initiatives around the energy sector. So now 3 out of the 4, what we would be calling unicorns, are out of the Nigerian market. And what I'm wondering is whether the continent is able to push past the pandemic for us to see a production of even more unicorns in the next few years. Or do we expect that there's going to be a lull, you know, knowing that how it happens around the world? For example, in Asia, you would see that it takes longer to produce the first unicorns, maybe, but the moment you have ready, you know, this 1 billion valuation companies, then it's faster. You start to see them springing up faster. So now, because of the pandemic, do we expect that there's going to be a lull, or is there still potential? And maybe you could also tell us, Mkululi, and we'll throw it back to Mimshak, what are these factors that have led Nigeria to take the lead, you know, on the continent in producing this? Yeah, go ahead. Mkululi.
Thank you, Casey. And I would like to also honor Hawa for leading us in this conversation. Of course, our chairman, who's set up the stage for us to be able to do this. I also like to honor my compatriots who have spoken before me, setting the stage for us to have this conversation. I think looking at the successes of Flutterwave, like we've mentioned, and other unicorns, this actually is a good signpost, and it's an encouraging point for anyone else to say, okay, if we can get someone from Nigeria, from Africa, becoming a unicorn, it really gives confidence. So what COVID has done, because of the challenges that have been local, that have become global challenges, but everyone, they need to look at local problems. but some of the local problems are really global problems. Definitely, I believe that post-COVID, we'll see a flurry of solutions that will propel the next unicorns. More importantly, I think us in Africa, we have the African Continental Trade Agreement that is now in force, which is going to enable Africa to be one big market. I believe that this is the stage for innovators to really push forward to solutions that will ensure that Africa can trade within itself instead of always looking out for other countries. We need to look at our own challenges and come up with unique solutions. And in that process, we become unicorns. So certainly I'm very optimistic about post-COVID. And I think that the stage that has been set by Flutterwave and other unicorns really is a positive signpost in terms of the possibilities. I think more importantly, taking from Hannah, the issue of angel investment. I'm also a member of Urban through Heritage Angel Investors, which is the first angel investment network in Zimbabwe. Is very key to set up very strong community investment clubs to ensure that the bottom, like what Mimshak said, that you need to push the bottom up so that they can be able to be more broad-based, more rather than a few of startups going to that level.
Great. Mimshak, do you want to weigh in, particularly on the second part of the question? Why is Nigeria taking the lead? And perhaps also, what other sectors are we likely to see?
Yeah, so thanks again. On one hand, I think it's, I see, like he said, I see that there is going to be a serious increase in the number of unicorns that we would have on the continent. And one of them, and two major factors. The first is there's a transfer of credibility that's happening with this first wave of unicorns that we have. A lot of the investors who are now creating Africa funds were people who never were interested in Africa, who never thought that Africa was a potential. But what we're seeing today is a lot more investments, a lot more funds are creating Africa-focused funds, from Google creating the Black Founders Fund. So a lot more people, there's now a new renewed interest in Africa, and not just Africa for grants or for aid, but Africa for investment, which is great. The second thing is that startups, by my theory, are the best places to incubate new ideas. Now, if you look at the development of Silicon Valley, from how PayPal created someone like Peter Thiel, who's one of the most prolific investors in the US, and created Elon Musk, who's one of the richest men in the world. You see how people break out of startups to form other startups, and those startups that they form become more successful because there's also transfer of credibility, there's transfer of skill, there's transfer of talents, there's transfer of ideas, and that begins to ripple and create a ripple effect. We're seeing the same thing happen in Nigeria, where some of the founders that we see today were ex-co-founders or were team members of some of the early startups like Jumia or Konga, and have now gone off to spin off their own startups. They've gotten the experience required. They've worked in the startup space. They've had networks and connections and conversations with investors. So they're able to transfer that skill and be able to use those skills in raising going on. For Nigeria, one of the reasons why Nigeria is producing a lot of unicorns, on one hand, there is the size, the sheer size of the potential markets. With Nigeria's population on a constant rise today, I'm estimated at 200 million. A lot of people are seeing the potential for coming into Nigeria and creating big businesses. But more importantly, there is also there's been a wave of people who left Nigeria, and that wave is now returning. So we're having a first wave of returnees from Nigeria, from diaspora. So if you look at a lot of the startups that are going and becoming more successful today, a lot of returnees are coming back. What does this show? This shows a bunch of people who have local context, who've gone out to get global exposure, and are now returning to merge that local context and global exposure together to form companies. Now the beauty of these companies is that they also now have the credibility to raise finance, because they've been abroad and they've been working and been speaking to all of these sort of investors who need to understand the African market, but they sort of need someone who they can relate to. So these are sort of the reasons why the Nigerian market and Nigerian startup ecosystem is taking this rise and upward turn and is being able to convert. In terms of thinking about new industries, for investment, I see that fintech is still going to dominate for quite a while. And it's not just because there's already a buzz right now, but it's just because of the sheer size of the problem. In Nigeria, for one, there's about 80% or so financial inclusion. Even with all the great startups that are coming out in the same financial inclusion space, the regulatory bottleneck is still creating a big hurdle for people to cross. As we begin to see pressure mount up on the financial regulators to bring down that barrier, we would see a lot more innovative startups pumping into the fintech space and creating more sort of financial services for the mass market of Nigerians. Now, with the Africa Free Trade Agreement coming into implementation, what that would also mean is that startups that have created a dominance in Nigeria, with Africa's being Africa's largest market, will now have the companies like Flutterwave building out that digital infrastructure and that financial infrastructure across several countries. It'll be easier for new people to scale their solutions across the continent. So I'm seeing that there's going to be a lot more in the financial services space. Another place that I see huge opportunity will be within the agriculture space. Today, over 70% of the continent's population are still farmers. And what that means is that there is a huge opportunity for anyone who can create great innovative solutions in the agriculture space. I see that there are already a couple of interesting solutions coming on board. Many of those solutions will be powered by the financial services solutions that are coming out, and will begin to roll out those solutions across. I also see a huge potential within the job space. And I'm very careful not to say education space, because I see that education is going to be redefined from the way we know it today, being handled by universities and giving out certificates. I see that we'll have more Andela type solutions or Andela type organizations that would provide capacity, but capacity that matches people to jobs. As we see the shrinking population in Europe, we would begin to see a new change in terms of where people begin to look for the next potential labor market. And I feel that the next potential labor market will be Africa. You see how countries like Canada are creating deliberate Africa strategies to get talent from Nigeria or from Africa to relocate to Canada. We would see a lot more of those types of engagements, but now they would need to ensure the quality of the talent that's being either emigrated or that would be working remotely for this company. So I see a lot more Andelas across various verticals. So not just in the tech space, but also across creativity, content creation, and many more opportunities. So if I were to have a crystal ball to say, what do I see for the future? I see fintech getting almost 10 times bigger than it is today. So maybe 5 or 6 more unicorns in the next 3 years from fintech. I see the next burgeoning space coming in the agriculture space. I also see logistics, because agriculture would need logistics and finance to work. And then finally, I see a huge talent economy, gig economy type startups coming up and growing super fast, and also taking unicorn status in the next 3 to 4 years.
Which is really interesting, because if you look at the priority sectors under the AFCFTA, you're mentioning sectors that are not necessarily factored in there. And maybe even starting to wonder, is there a disconnect between policymakers and the entrepreneurial ecosystem, being able to tell what are the temperatures on the ground and what's likely to rise and drive the continent further and faster? But we'll come to that. I want to jump to Etienne and even Anne. And now thinking closer home, I know there's been this whole, focus towards the continent largely since 2016. And we've seen, investors' eyes beginning to look towards the continent, towards to scout and identify this in investment ready or in investor attractive opportunities. But we know we've got money on the continent. You have these high net worth individuals on the continent, and it bothers me. Why is there a disconnect? Why don't we have increasing volumes of local investors or high net worth individuals identifying opportunities on the continent in some of the sectors that we're mentioning, to put in money in the continent? We've seen reports, including the very latest one, listing some of our names stashing money out there. What needs to be done, Anne? If we could start with you, what needs to be done first of all to, even sell the opportunity for investment? Because at the end of the day, what they're looking for is some form of return on the investment. But why not do it home? Why not support the ecosystem that is here across the continent? Anne?
All right, so thank you, Kazi, and thank you for the team for having me today. Yes, so for me, we've been doing that work at Regal Africa, really working with high net worth individuals, also working with the Africa diaspora because we believe they're very, very important, and what we call Friends of Africa. So again, the Global Investment Committee is very important. But in regards to your question about Africans and why they're not investing startups, right? I would say from my experience, most of our clients, our high net worth individuals in East Africa, all they know is real estate and their own personal business, right? Real estate and their own personal business. That has been our culture, but it's taken time. So at Regal Africa, we were established in 2015, and we continue educating our clients. We continue letting them know that you need to create wealth, but you also need to manage wealth. And when you're doing that, you need a diversified investment portfolio. And when you're doing that, you need to then look at alternative investment. And so that's when we bring in the idea of being an angel investor. Because again, a lot of these high net worth individuals, whether they're executives, professionals, or business people, they understand what it takes to run a successful business and build it up. So we talk to them and say, look, you're in this particular business, you do not have the time, energy to actually start another startup. What you need to do is find the right entrepreneur or the right entrepreneurial team that you can back. And when you back them, you'll back them with your money, because that's what everybody says they want. I'm a banker by profession. Everybody says they want money, but really what they need is more than money. So we talk to these high net worth individuals who we are encouraging, because now we are like the African and the African diaspora, and we're saying, look, you can provide the money, but that's just the beginning. You also need to provide your network. With your networks, one person can just make a phone call and that startup can get a contract that would change the trajectory of that business. But also they need mentorship, because if you see a lot of these startups, there are a lot of them by the youth and women, and most of them have probably never been in corporate. So they really don't know how to run a business. They're mostly in this sort of hustling mentality. Now I'll talk about from Kenyan perspective. So they're hustling, they're trying to make quick money, but mentorship is important because you need to have the right structure, the right processes, marketing, finance, strategy, all those things. So that's what we've been saying. So we've been talking a lot to the angels or potential angels and telling them, look, this is an alternative investment, right? You'll get great returns. You can provide patient capital. You understand this market better than a foreigner, right? So this is your time. The world is looking into Africa, right? And so if you're in Africa, why then are you settling? And I'll talk about this because I was 15 years in the US and I was getting people to invest there and they're getting the 1%, 5%. And I'm here, you're talking about double digits in Africa. So we tell them, yes, you might want to have a diversified portfolio. And I talk to people about global wealth. Yes, you want some of it offshore, some of it, because again, risk management is important. But what you can risk, I believe you're gonna get great returns and create impact on the continent, you need to do it. And the way you do it is in trade and investment. And so we are supposed to find the right businesses to do that. So that's the work we've been doing with angels. At the same time, at Regal Africa, we've been working with the entrepreneurs. I have to say the challenge in Africa is the entrepreneurs who are in the informal sector. We cannot grow this continent if it's an informal sector. There's no way. There's no way I'm gonna give you money. First of all, you're so small, you're micro. Second of all, you don't keep your financial records. There's no governance. We don't even know what you're doing. So even though you have the potential to scale your business, I, as an angel, will have a very hard time working with you because can I trust you? Can I know what it is that you're doing? There are no mitigations of risk. So for me, even as we have this discussion about angel investing and educating them and supporting them, we also need to do the same thing with the entrepreneurs and supporting them to be more formal so that they can access the funding that the angels have, because there is money, but the disconnect is the entrepreneurs are not ready and the angels are not used to this. So they need to understand, where do I put money? How do I do due diligence? Should I do it alone? Should I be part of a network? What should I do? And then a lot of them ask me, why don't I just enter that business? Why don't I just start up my own fintech and employ my own people instead of giving my money to someone who's already started a business? So that's why we need to start educating people that you cannot be in every industry, right? Focus on your business or your career, but the money you're looking to invest, instead of just putting it in a bond or putting it offshore, you can actually put it in a company that would transform that community, provide the right goods and services, create jobs, and transform this continent, which will then help you as an angel investor. So that is what we've been talking to our clients about.
Okay, and I hear your point, and I'm coming to you, Etienne, and I am wondering, is it possible that we have imported a way of doing things, even in the conversation for angel investing on the continent? Is it possible that we are importing a way of doing things? Because we know we've grappled with the issue of being, our entrepreneurs, over 80% of micro enterprises on this continent are informal enterprises. Is it possible that we now need to innovate a way of investing into these businesses that doesn't require them to meet certain standards that are imported from elsewhere? Etienne, I'm just challenging how we are thinking around this, the ecosystem. Yes.
Thank you, Casey. Yes, it is possible. It is possible to innovate. It is possible to import best practices. Is what we are doing for this panel, for what WBAW are doing. They are doing in Africa. Is it possible? And when we consider the example of Nigeria, as you said, now Nigeria, they are leading the unicorn markets. They are building big startup. Yes, that means that it is possible to do it. So how we can put the other countries in the mold? Currently, okay, we have the first Francophone unicorn in our region, which is Wave, after the fintech companies in Nigeria. So now we have one company in Francophone Western Africa, which raised more than, I think that $200 million, but the valuation is more than 1 billion. So they are the first unicorn in our region. So that means it's in the fintech sector. That means it is possible. And as I think as Mimbak said, we have huge potential in agriculture. And it will be, for example, for the IoT applied to agriculture. Because as he said, we have a lot of logistic, transportation, a lot of financing issue. And agriculture is where Africa, we are taking the most resources now. And we can apply digital, you can apply IoT, is the technology, they are there. The young people, they can use it. What we need is, okay, how we could help the market, how we can help support the entrepreneurs. So we have the access to finance. As Anna said, we have we need to the training, education, which is really important, and we need to discuss a lot, talk a lot. We have a political stakeholders, because their role is to create the environment. As a private actor, we can play our role, but without a trusty environment, it is difficult to move forward. It is difficult to create the momentum that, because we have the youngest, we have Africa as the biggest, youngest population. We know it. We have all the resources. So it is possible. Recently, I read a report which said that, just to confirm what you are saying, 70% of investors in Africa, they are outside. 70%. Okay, the first continent is US, and after following by Europe, UK, and France. We don't have the figures from Chinese. We don't have, but from Western, you know that UK, France, US, okay, they are investing in Africa. Why? Why they are putting, recently they put, we have 367 investors who invested more than 100K in deals in Africa. 70% are coming from outside Africa. Why? We have resources in Africa. Where do we put our money? As Anna said, in real estate, in our own family business, this. But the impact of investing in people, in startup, in entrepreneur, just to create value, to reduce poverty, yeah, this is a big power that we have in our hand. But it's a question of education to say that it is possible. But we need to start first by trust in people. So Africa should trust in African. We need to start from there. We need to trust in our fellow. So if I'm confident with a business plan of a startup in Cote d'Ivoire, and I'm okay to put my money, my saving in this business, because I do it, I can bring other investors to support the business. So we need to start from there. We need to trust in our people, in our economy, in our environment.
Excellent, Etienne. I think that's a really, really salient point, that we need to trust. We need to trust in our people. And I'm calling all of us to start to think, is it possible to begin to rethink even the whole framework of angel investing in Africa? And when we begin to think around innovative financing models that have worked in Africa and not elsewhere, table banking being one of them, then we begin to see maybe there is a psychology in which we thrive. There's a psychology in which we do business, and perhaps we need to innovate how it is that we. But I wonder whether Trevor is still here, and I know that Hannah and Mimshak may need to jump off shortly. I wonder whether Trevor is still here, because I was wondering whether, is Trevor still here? I don't see him, but we need to respond to the issue of access to finance from the SME perspective.
Could I say something about what you just said? Oh, sorry.
Yes. Yes, Anne. And your hand is up.
Yes, I just wanted to say something about what you said about innovation. Yes, innovating is very important. And the way we do business in Africa and the way we raise money is different from around the world. But in business, the fundamentals are the same, right? So again, as they say, when you're starting out, it's the 3 F's: your family, your friends, and what I call fine angels. People call them fools, but I say they're fine angels. And that is where the angel investors come in, someone who's willing to take the risk on you. But then if you're going to innovate, there is no way, and I always ask a lot of these entrepreneurs, would you just give money to just anybody, right? You have to have those basics for anyone, as I believe I-10 was talking about. There's a trust factor. So even as we innovate, we need to be talking to these entrepreneurs and telling them, prepare yourself well enough so that money can come to you, right? Prepare yourself and your financial record, and I won't go into all that, but your financial record, your governance, the way you run business, your processes is important. That will never change. But if we stay informal, we still stay cash, we don't know what we're doing, and we're asking people to give us money, that will be very challenging, especially if you want to scale up. But if people are just running business, just sort of for like lifestyle businesses, then now we can talk about the table banking options and that. But if we're looking at great businesses that will create jobs, that will become African brands and global brands, we have to do the right way of doing business.
Absolutely. And we want to build, thriving enterprises from the continent that can compete globally. Trevor, I just wanted to ask you to input, even as we try to wrap this conversation, but to input on the issue of access to finance generally. And a lot has been said on the preparation that micro enterprises need to go through. But what were your findings? If you could just throw it out there, what are your key findings from your study, your research? I was interested to know, are there similar findings from across the continent? Is the situation the same across the continent when it comes to challenges around access to finance?
Thank you, Kezi, and thank you to my country chair for giving me the opportunity to be able to share this platform with you. The key issues around for access to finance within the country. First, let me apologize. I do not have a video for you. I've got a very bad network. But the issues around access to finance I think, are generally the same around the continent. There are basic issues that we're dealing with because of the fact that we have got SMEs that are all pretty small. And in terms of angel investors having to finance them, their ticket size is really small. And the second aspect then comes into play around the issue of the fact that they're also not structured. They do not have a governance structure. They do not have their financials. And they probably will not even be able to provide any form of collateral in terms of financing. But in having to deal with this, I think it's also very, very important that we restructure how we finance SMEs on the African continent. The models that we have adopted from Europe, which are speaking to this very high degree of due diligence, do not apply to us. We are micro entities, and we require to be able to design a financing model that meets this. And basically, it should be speaking to us having to mitigate the risk, which is the problem that we have even from commercial financial institutions having to finance the SMEs, is that the risk to financing them is too high. We need to find ways to be able to mitigate this risk while allowing them the support, giving them the support that allows us to build the capacity of these SMEs to develop to a position of being competitive. And once we move them from that stage, then we can go into the next stage of having, can we move it to commercial entity? But the key issue, I think, is us having to design an innovative financing model that is adaptable to our local conditions because of the type of SMEs that we are normally working with. I think Mimash said it very well, that the greatest potential that we have on the African continent is in the startup space. Also because of the fact that it contains the highest number of the population, because they are all youth who are all working to try and find entrepreneurship to get out of the challenge of not having jobs. And this is what we need to support. There will be collateral damage along the way, but we need to find the answer to this, which is going to allow us to be able to bring in, to leverage in additional angel investment to scale the businesses.
Great. Hawa is here, which means we need to just bring this to a close. But I'm just thinking if we can go give quick closing remarks. Hannah, you can kick off. Just quick, very quick, even if it's a 10-second closing remark. What's the one thing we need to do? We need to begin to build capacity to invest from within. What do we need to do, Hannah? Just one word.
I think it's already happening. I think we should not underestimate the fact that there are more and more investment clubs and angel investors that are active on the continent and that are actively deploying capital. I think we need to work together. We're seeing more and more financing opportunities between different countries. If you look at investment clubs or syndicate like Future Africa, or Legos Business Angel and a few other clubs, we can see that they are very active in their respective countries. And I'm starting to see, inquiries from clubs from outside DRC willing to invest in DRC. So I'm very optimistic. I think we should keep the conversation and the dialogue open. We should network. We should not expect the government to come to our rescue, and we need to mobilize our own capital and very importantly to back sustainable businesses and startups. So looking forward to this new chapter opening for Africa.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you for your input and for your time. Mukululi, maybe we could hear from you. Just closing remarks as we bring this to an end. Seems to you might be muted. Mukululi, we don't seem to hear you.
Yeah.
So as Mukululi is sorting out sound, Etienne, we could hear quick concluding remarks.
Yes, for me, it's simple. We just need to stop thinking that the best is out of Africa. The best in Africa, but we need to invest in Africa to get the best out of Africa.
Excellent. The best is right here with us. Anne Wamboi.
All right, thank you, Kezi. I think my last remarks is this. We need to have more angel investor education, letting people know what an angel investor is and how they can find the right deals so that they can make the right decisions. And I think we need to have a diversified pool of angel investors. We need to have more women who are angel investors because they'll understand the women who are in business. We need also youth, people who have made it, right? The entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs become more angel investors because they'll be able to understand the journey of these young entrepreneurs. And the last thing is we need to get more of the African diaspora involved to make sure that even if they're outside the continent, they can still participate in being angel investors and be able to support the businesses that need the money, the networks, and the mentorship so that they can scale up. Thank you.
So education, diversifying to ensure that we are reaching the different demographics, and then definitely collaboration. Yes, Mukululi, we come back to you.
Yes, I think there's a lot of lobbying that we need to do to ensure that the enabling policies and regulation that will make it safe for people to invest. Maybe, for instance, get some tax breaks or tax rebates as a way of getting people to invest. I think as much as we're looking for angel investors, we should promote institutional investors, especially where we're looking at where they're looking at linkages, business linkage programs, then they can invest. And finally, I think the issue of training the startups and making them ready to receive investment is very, very crucial. I think I've been talking to AfriLabs, affiliated to Urban, with a very exciting, they've got an exciting program called Catalytic. Catalyst, yeah. Basically, what happens is then any angel, if they invest in any startups and they're affiliated to an AfriLab incubation hub, they can get matching grants, 2-to-1, 3-to-1. I think that's a good program to promote angel investment, and I look forward to some of the angels taking part in that as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for hosting this event.
Thank you. Thank you to all our panelists. Great insights. I think definitely the conversation needs to continue. Back to you, Hawa. Thank you.
Okay, so we are some minutes over the closing time. We're so sorry for those that we held back, but thank you also very much, Nimshak, Hannah, Etienne, Mukululi, Trevor, and of course, last but not the least, Kezi, for pulling it all together. Thank you all so much for participating. Certainly, we enjoyed the conversation. And like you said, Kezi, it needs to continue. There's a lot more to say. And I hope that as a team, we will continue to engage, we'll remain in touch. And under the broader WBAF, we expect that the great work that the platform is doing will continue over the years, and that will make a significant difference globally, but particularly to the African continent. So thank you all for attending and hope to see you again soon. So we're closing the session now. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Hawa.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.